Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Stephanie Rule. I'm a morning anchor and managing editor at Bloomberg Television. I'm honored to be part of this esteemed panel, Global Game Changers. Never before have we seen innovation, social change, and business intersect. It's a time when millennials to senior citizens have stood up and said, I want change, I want to live in a better world. And it's not just through philanthropic efforts. Finally, we are seeing a marriage between technology, business, and social good. I want to start with a quick video to show you what this is all about.
Never before has so much innovation been directed to improving lives and economies throughout the world. Meet the Global Game Changers, who are partnering with communities and organizations to find solutions while unleashing the collective power of compassion, intellect, and skill. In 2006, after traveling with the UN World Food Program, Lauren Bush Lauren was deeply affected by the plight of the people she met. She designed and began to sell the Feed One bag. The number 1 signifies that each bag feeds one child in school for 1 year. To date, Feed has provided over 75 million meals to children around the world.
Strategic partnerships have been so helpful and so essential in growing and scaling Feed. From the beginning, we partnered with companies like Whole Foods, Disney, Pottery Barn, The Gap, Target, and what I've learned most is obviously you can find a partner who has like values, their company brand benefits, our company and brand benefits, and we're able to reach a whole new audience with our mission. That is really a win-win.
In 2006, Ben Goldhirsch wanted to do good in the world. He founded a media company to highlight inspirational people doing good things. The company has evolved to include the online community in a robust social media platform, committed to both talking about and doing good.
We have, let's say 3 million people who come to the site every month. They wanted more, that they didn't want just a consumption experience, that they wanted to engage with each other. We then took the step of, pivoting our business from solely media to community. I think it was a gutsy play, but I think more important than whether it works or not is that it's the right thing to do for our mission. And if we fail, there will be a lot of lessons for whoever comes next.
Prince Jigel Ogen Wangchuk is busy putting Bhutan on the map. He is the representative of His Majesty to the Bhutan Olympic Committee and the global ambassador to the King's Challenge.
The idea was born in the presence of His Majesty. His Majesty said if you want a real challenge, you must try to explore as much of Bhutan in a limited time frame, which will challenge the body and the mind.
The King's Challenge aims to build social capital and mobilize development funds for the purpose of environmental conservation, cultural preservation, and youth engagement in Bhutan. Fred Swaniker grew up in different parts of Africa and saw all the overwhelming obstacles facing that continent's leaders in healthcare, infrastructure, poverty, housing, and sanitation.
Where would I start? But I thought, there's no way in my lifetime that I can try and tackle all these things. And that's really what inspired the African Leadership Academy. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed leaders can change Africa. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever will.
ALA's young leaders have already started having an impact on Africa. They've launched 38 nonprofit and for-profit enterprises since inception, and many of these enterprises continue to thrive as sustainable organizations. In 2012, the Taliban tried to assassinate Malala Yousafzai to stop her campaign for girls' education. Shiza Shahid, who had befriended the girl in 2009, rushed to be by her side. Together, the two women created the Malala Fund, an innovative nonprofit designed to empower girls through education so they can recognize their potential and be agents for positive change in their communities.
Girls, if educated, can break the cycle of poverty and lift their communities in a way that no other single group can do. And I think that if we as a global community of funders, innovators, educators, governments can recognize that and implement solutions that truly empower girls, we'll have a very different world.
clearly an inspirational video, and now we have a chance to meet these great people. I want to give everyone a chance to really introduce themselves and their mission. His Royal Highness, would you like to begin?
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today, and I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. First and foremost, I think I am a law subject to His Majesty the King, and a dedicated servant to the people of Bhutan. I was very fortunate to be born in a very small country, sandwiched between two of the most populous countries in the world. And I was born to a father that is not only the father of my country, but also the father of this idea called cross-national happiness. And ever since I can remember, His Majesty has always taught me that the service and the responsibility of a king or a member of the royal family is to be the servant of the people and to take care of the well-being and welfare of her citizens. And this is, in short and in a nutshell, my endeavor and my objective is to and will be to take care of the welfare and well-being of my people and country. And we are now in the 21st century, and Bhutan faces many challenges, and we are looking at many innovating ways of developing and constructing a brighter future for the citizens of Bhutan.
Shiza? Thank you. Shiza?
I was born in Pakistan, and can you hear me? Yeah, that's better. I grew up in Pakistan and witnessed there firsthand the lives that many girls have to live, and how important it is to educate girls so that they have the self-confidence and the skills to create a better life for themselves. Malala was one such girl who was speaking out for her right to go to school and ran a campaign from the age of 11 till the age of 15. And to me, she was a younger sister and a mentee. She was shot in the head on her way back from school about a year and a half ago on the 9th of October 2012, and she was targeted by the Taliban for speaking out for her right to go to school. And in that moment, the world stood up really horrified to have to understand and be faced with the reality of what life is like for girls across the world today. I decided to leave my career at that point and start a movement with Malala because I believed that in that moment we had awoken the global conscience, and we could either stop here and let this be a moment or start to put in place the wheels to create a movement that would have lasting, sustainable impact. And so that's what we've been working on over the last year, storytelling through writing a book, producing a film that comes out next year, and then mobilizing against that story by setting up the Malala Fund, which aims to get all girls in school by being an advocate for their rights and by investing in education entrepreneurs who are developing sustainable education solutions.
Fred?
So my passion is about the development of a new generation of leaders for Africa. And I developed this passion from my experience of living and working in different parts of the continent. And everywhere I went, I realized that we have a beautiful continent with a lot of potential. But the single biggest obstacle that was holding us back from achieving this potential was the quality of the leaders that we had. And a lot was being done to address the symptoms of bad leadership in Africa. But nothing was being done to really address the root cause. And so, I really believe that if we give food aid to people in Africa who are starving, that's good. It feeds them for a month or two. But unless we develop African scientists who can come up with innovations that can truly make sure that we can grow our own crops and create policies at the governmental level that make sure that farmers have incentives to grow and you create the right infrastructure and so forth, we will never be able to feed ourselves. We can give blankets and so forth to refugees that come out of a war, But unless we have leaders who don't go to war in the first place, we're going to keep having the cycle over and over and again. And so, I really believe that the single most important thing that we need to do to really allow Africa to stand on its own feet is to give a good leadership. And I'm talking about leadership across the board, in business, in government, in science and technology and so forth. People who can create the right policies, build the companies that can create and drive economic growth, come up with innovations that can solve our problems in healthcare and infrastructure and so forth. And so that's my passion, and I've been working on this for the last 10 years. We have 600 young leaders under development with the African Leadership Academy. And our goal is to create a new generation of 6,000 very high impact leaders that can transform the continent. And I recently began a new initiative to expand this vision into a network of 25 universities across Africa that will educate about 250,000 people at a time, using recent innovations in blended technology and so forth to really allow us to bring a new generation of leaders forward. So that's the work I've been doing.
I'm Ben. I run Good, build products mostly for myself, things that I want coming out of school. I didn't feel like there was any media that was effectively reflecting a more integrated life. There was, this is a note to me.
Love note, yes.
Okay. The idea was originally to rebrand Good to be more pragmatic and powerful and kind of attack the idea that do-gooder was somehow a pejorative, which seemed idiotic to me. The media allowed us to move into our second business, which was consulting, helping businesses align their profit objectives with social impact, which obviously there's plenty of opportunities to pull off. And then the third business unit is a community platform for like-minded people to find each other and help each other live a good life. And it's a fun hustle to be able to pursue, I guess, the want to win in a competitive business sense. Like, I'm very competitive with Lauren. I plan on defeating her on this panel, and then later in the marketplace. But she's got the jump on me in products. Love to hear about it, Lauren.
Okay, thanks, Ben, for that introduction. My name is Lauren. I'm the founder of Feed, and I started Feed over 7 years ago. I had the opportunity as a student to travel with the UN World Food Program to Africa, Asia, Latin America, and really saw firsthand the issue of hunger that so many live with. 843 million people around the world are hungry, are food insecure. Even in our own country, about 49 million people are food insecure, meaning they rely on food stamps or subsidies to get by. And what I found is that this is an extremely massive and overwhelming issue, yet hunger is a solvable issue. So I came back from all these travels and had this frustration for many years that I didn't know what I could do. And I certainly didn't know what I could tell my fellow students and peers to do to help with the issue to end world hunger. And at the same time, I love design and the fashion industry. So sort of had this aha moment for the first feed bag, and for every feed bag sold, we feed one child in school for 1 year. And now it's a range of products, 50 plus bags and different accessories. Many are made by artisans too, so we're supporting local livelihoods and traditional crafts, while also giving back to feed people in the country. And through the result of the sale of products and through strategic partnerships with different companies like Target and Disney and HSN and many more, we've been able to give 75 million school meals to kids around the world. So our mission is really, to not only fundraise, but I would say to awareness raise and engage others in the fight to end hunger, which again can seemingly be this massive, overwhelming issue. Yet when you break it down by meals, or by kids affected or fed, it really is very tangible and meaningful for consumers to engage in it.
When I hear all of you speak this morning, I hear desire, passion, purpose. It's extraordinary, but it's somewhat unique to your generation. Was there more than an aha moment? Shiza, when you decided to leave your job, when did the turn happen where any of you said, I'm not going to take a traditional route and get a traditional job working for the man, following a path of work? It seemed that your work seems to be driven by passion and creativity. How did the two intersect? Because it's really unique on a broad sense to millennials, where we've seen people of other generations do it in unique examples. There's such a massive, extraordinary push now for those under 30 who really see this purpose.
I had tried many routes to have an impact in the world with my life. I had grown up as an activist at a politically contentious time in Pakistan. I had marched in the streets. I had worked in nonprofits, microfinance, and I had worked in business as a consultant with McKinsey and Company. And eventually had thought I had it all figured out, and I would bridge solutions with business, and I would create companies that would help employ people where there wasn't employment. But when Malala was shot, it just sort of shook me up very suddenly. And even though I had this plan, this long-term goal that was going to lead to impact eventually, I knew that in that moment I had to make the jump right then. And I think for many of us in this field, we're all thinking we're getting there eventually and we have it all laid out, but then suddenly there's something that makes you say, okay, I've got to do this right now, and I've got to do it this way, and I have no idea what's going to happen, but I know it's the right thing to do.
Ben, how did you make the decision, I'm not going to go work for the man, I want to be the next generation of the man?
I think it's indicative of an evolving sense of what success is. And I think every generation, or there's chunks of history where there's different visions of what success is. And I think the generation you're speaking about sees how success might not be measured solely in a net worth statement, but success is worth, I think a lot of people think of success as like how much value you add. And I think our generation has had the opportunity to witness a lot more problems and also have a greater feeling of efficacy and ability to affect problems. So when coming at the age-old question of how to add value, I think our generation has moved into the space because that's where the opportunity is. And I think, what Goodbuild is working on with the National Happiness Index, I think is almost a national version of that evolving sense of what success is, moving from a GDP sense. So I think it's a trend that isn't going to stop, given the awareness of what's afoot in the world and the problems that are playing a vicious team game at getting more and more challenging. So it's exciting for the individual interest and the collective.
Lauren, for you, you have a company that's set up similar to a Tom's Shoes, which people know so well. Blake is profiled as one extraordinary CEO. You're profiled as a woman who has married philanthropy, but also for profit, because at the end of the day, Feed is a for-profit business.
Yes.
Does that give you much more power, that you're not simply in a scenario where you're asking for support and you're giving even more?
Yeah, I think, and to go back to Ben, I think it is indicative too of our generation. So there's studies that prove that millennials, of which I think we are all part of that demographic, look to businesses to do good for the world just as much as they look to government or nonprofits. So it's really this change in mind shift to say, and I think it's holding businesses to a greater responsibility to step up and have this purposeful mission that really could make the world a better place. And millennials are expecting businesses to do just that. So it is, as Feed is a for-profit, it is, I would say, it gives us more freedom, and it gives us a more sustainable way to give back that doesn't rely on the whims of fundraising. And we do have a nonprofit, so we do a bit of that. But what I'm most excited about, the bigger and better we can grow our business, the bigger and better our impact can be.
Do you feel that the businesses that you approach and that you partner with are truly buying in and partnering, or they're sort of saying, this is a cute idea, let's go with it this season? Or are you actually seeing a shift?
That's a good question. I think we've partnered with some very big established companies, retailers and brands, and there is that realization that they have to authentically incorporate giving back into their core mission. Maybe some of them do jump from cause to cause. So that has been a challenge for Feed, to be very honest, because we'll work with a great company for a season or a year or two, and then they're kind of on to the next. But I think, compared to 7 years ago when I started, when it was really like, oh, Lauren, great project, how nice is that? Talk to our CSR person. We now are, talking to the buyers.
Social responsibility.
Yeah, sorry. We're now talking to the buyers. We're talking to the people who are making the business decisions. And I think that's gotten a lot easier over the last 7 years. So I would say, I wouldn't say every company is there, but I do think there's the goodwill. I think they realize that to retain loyalty from customers and from younger employees, they need to have that part to their business. But it is something that's more readily understandable, and it makes my job easier.
I think there's a nice compliment that the people who are managing the businesses that are partnering with Lauren are confronting kind of a peer who's equally tactical in Lauren or whoever they're dealing with in the civic space. Like, I think part of the generational shift is that like talent is here and it's aggressive, and there's on the for-profit and nonprofit side, like I'm sure with the Malala Foundation, you guys are executing kind of best-in-class tactics to pursue the goal. And I think there's not there's no discount on, oh, we can chill out because we mean well. Because we mean well, we should have as big teeth as anyone else. And I think that's a constant across the kind of group that you're talking to.
Your Royal Highness, it seems that we're taking big, lofty ideas and actually putting them to great practice. There's great business cases here. How exactly does the happiness index work? How is it implemented, the response?
Well, I think friends, and especially the friends that we have on the panel here today, is very inspirational for Bhutan, because one of the greatest advantages that Bhutan has is the advantage of retrospect, and we should learn from the best examples and practices that are happening today. But gross national happiness was the idea born in the early 70s when His Majesty, my father, became king when he was only 16 years old. So I think that is quite interesting. But well, gross national happiness is it tries to find a balance between externalism and internalism, as it were, and it tries to find a balance between materialism and also the spiritual well-being. It takes into consideration economic satisfaction as well as emotional satisfaction at the same time, and we feel that it is a more wholesome and more conclusive way of looking into development, and because human beings have limited wants, but more often than not they have unlimited wants in a world with finite resources. So we have to try to strike a balance between economic development and also social well-being at the same time.
Fred, that must be something that you wrestle with, work on as you're working in developing countries. How do you help the children that you work with, the schools you work with, in their pursuit of happiness when you're trying to give them really the basic tools to educate themselves, to support themselves?
See, in Africa, we have a very young population. The average age in Africa is 18.5, whereas the average age in, say, Japan is about 45. And so the message that, and 60% of our population is below the age of 25. So the message that we give our young leaders is that it's really up to, there's no one who's going to do it for them. We don't have a gender. In the U.S., you've got baby boomers, and now we're talking about the generation X, and then there's millennials. You don't have those different generations in Africa. There's really, one big youth bulge, and so it's about getting them to realize that unless you start acting young as a leader and really saying, I'm not going to wait for someone to solve the problems we have in our community, but every single person in your own little way, you can find a way to contribute in solving some problem, whether, and really trying to find something that you're passionate about and solve it in your small way. And then it's the collective efforts of everyone doing their own little bit that's going to really allow us to move the continent forward. And so that's the message that we share with them.
Is longevity of your missions a challenge that you face? When you look at an earthquake in Haiti, a tsunami in Indonesia, there's a huge amount of support and strategy around recovering and improving these situations. And then unfortunately, when the news media leaves, support is lost. How do you face, Shiza, I ask you, Malala has been in the news. She's an extraordinary story that has had a global impact. But for you, how do you face the challenge to keep her story and your mission relevant and supported globally when, sadly, there's going to be another terrible thing that we will face in this world, another crisis, another devastation that's going to get attention. How are you going to sustain what you're trying to do and get the support you need?
It's a struggle, but there's also immense opportunity. For us, after Malala was shot, we were very touched to see across the world millions. Is that better? Yeah. After Malala was targeted, we were very touched to see across the world millions of girls, of boys, standing up and saying, "I am Malala." And that's what pushed us to try and create an organization, because we realized this wasn't just a story. This was tapping into something inside people that made them angry at the state of the world today and made them want to identify with bravery and with action. Since we've set up the organization, being aware of the fact that this is not about a tragic story, but about creating a movement, we've tried to deploy alternative media. So social media, for example, is a great way to keep people engaged when the traditional news is no longer interested. We've written a book, we're writing another one for younger children, filming a documentary, so finding more interesting ways of telling stories, telling the stories of other girls who've suffered or who are speaking up. And then giving people concrete ways to engage, because very often, as Lauren said, people want to help, but they don't know how. And what I've seen in our generation is people finding more unique, interesting ways to give people ways to engage, whether it's buying a feed bag or reading good or donating in a way that they know who they're donating to and have that interaction. We're coming up with more interesting ways to engage donors and to engage activists.
Lauren, through inspiration, admiration, envy, people want to be you, people want to be around you.
I don't know about that.
How do you face, I turn this to the two of you, it's extraordinary what you do. Is there an issue that the space becomes saturated? That so many people see this and they say, that's great, it's a great idea, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
How do you marry the idea of doing social good with a great business model and actually pursuing it and having success? Because you do run the risk that there is this saturation because people are so excited.
Agreed. No, that's a great question. And it is, 7 years in, I would say when Feed started, Blake Mykoski started Tom's about 9 months before Feed. Like, it was we were an anomaly, and now we're not. And it's so cool to me, honestly, to see that there's so many, young startups who start with a give back core to their mission, especially in the kind of consumer space. I brought with me actually some slides. Can we show slide 1? Just because I figured this was a conference that likes some facts. 93% of millennials will buy a product because of a cause association. Slide 2. 66% of consumers around the world say they prefer to buy product services from companies that have implemented programs to give back to society. And slide 3 just shows that the millennial spending power as of 2018 will surpass their parents' generation. All these things really excite me. So I think it does keep us on our toes, as it would any growing small consumer goods business, because it means that we need to keep our products and our partnerships really innovative. At the very basic level, consumers are going to buy something because they like the product first and foremost, and then the second layer is that it has this great authentic give back. So for Feed, to continue with our mission to create good products that feed the world, to continue making the donation per item sold really tangible and measurable, and hopefully meaningful for the consumer, but really to have a focus on design and product development and communication and engagement is really key, and will keep us at the forefront, hopefully, of this consumer goods movement, because it is becoming a more crowded space. But I think it's for the better of the world.
Ben?
I think one point that Lauren touched on there that's important is I think Feed or Tom's, if you take away the giving side of their business, are still competitive products in their category. And I think if they weren't competitive products in their category, if they weren't great new products that were interesting, independent of the social impact, I don't think the social impact would have elevated them to the success levels they've enjoyed. That there's more competition is just validation of the opportunity, and I think, it's like there's competition in any industry, that there's opportunity. I think a nice thing about ours is that when your competitors are winning, you're actually winning as well, since everyone's trying to generate a better outcome for all. But I don't know, Lauren may not be very competitive. I certainly am. And I like it. It's a fun thing to be aggressive in the space of doing good. And I think that's been a fun thing to watch across the board of all the people. And it's definitely not just on the for-profit, on the nonprofit side as well. And
do people realize that, how competitive the nonprofit world is?
Well, I think there's two types of competition there. There's competition for funding, because there's a set group of foundations that are making grants, and there's, a dogfight for those grants. But then there's just competition for execution, like who's doing the most interesting stuff and who is making the most interesting moves. And I think that's a super fun competition, the latter, because it also opens up more funders. Because I think one thing that's happening is people trying to find liquidity in doing good.
You're bringing the fun into funding.
I mean, just easy. I think the liquidity piece in the social impact space is an interesting next chapter for us. Like, I think we're getting better at accounting for the value of doing good. So if you have an organization that's moving X percentage of, kindergartners through college, and you can look at, what that same cohort would do without your service, there's a very tangible outcome from a tax basis versus cost to society. We don't have mechanisms right now that allow that organization to kind of effectively bank against the future value that they're going to generate, some affiliation with a tax ID or something. But I think that's coming because and we need to free up more capital, not just in the for-profit side of things, but on the nonprofit side, because there's models where that makes sense. And I think that'll be a fun financial hustle that's going to come to the table in the next few years.
Your Royal Highness, how do you measure the impact of the King's Challenge? It's safe to say we all have interest in the pursuit of happiness, but how do you measure the impact of the mission?
Well, the King's Challenge it's about the experience of travel.
Can you speak up?
Sorry, it's about the experience of travel, and about how the traveler can make an impact on the country, and how the country can make an impact on the traveler at the same time. We intend to invite global change makers such as the ones that are here today, and to invite them to Bhutan, to learn about Bhutan, and to find a deeper connection with Bhutan, so that they can see firsthand the challenges and opportunities that exist within our own country. We'll give them an experience to meet with our people, experience our culture, and hopefully appreciate our environment as well. And so these so-called global change makers will be able to exactly place their fingers on where they feel would be most appropriate to, and customize their goodwill towards Bhutan. And also, as a positive side effect, maybe the citizens of our country can also deeper appreciate our own country, and as much as the people that are invited to Bhutan at the same time.
Fred, how do you measure the impact of your work? Every child you educate is clearly a success. But year after year, when you look at your business model, how can you tell how far you're getting? How can you understand if you've reached your goals?
So there's, for us, the issue we're trying to solve is not so much the issue of education, but the issue of leadership in Africa. And so the way we measure the impact of that is really by looking at what the young people that we develop, the impact that they have on society. So, we're looking at, in the short term, how many lives are they touching through the innovations that they come up with in healthcare, or if they're going to be tackling education or clean drinking water or whatever. What percentage of them are going to get into senior positions in leadership in governments or in companies? How many jobs do they create through the companies that they found and the hundreds and thousands of people that they employ, and how many lives those families touch, and so forth. So we're tracking the impact in an absolute sense of what all these young people do when they go out into the world in Africa. But another thing that we're doing, because people say, well, so we get about 4,000 applications from 48 countries in Africa, and we select the top 100. And then we bring them into our academy every year, and that keeps growing. And so some people might say, well, your academy is not really doing anything. You're just selecting people who are going to be successful anyway. And then, it's not really your organization that's helping to develop them. So,
may I interrupt? Those who are saying that, are those the current leaders, part of the establishment? Because I wonder, do you all get any pushback? Because you are, I hate the word, but you are these disruptors, and those who are currently in power, or those who currently run your education system, are they trying to push you out? Because in a sense, you're exposing the emperor without his or her clothes.
No, I mean, for the most part, the people the existing leaders, I think, don't see us as too much of a threat yet.
But they will.
But we don't have that issue yet, because they look at it and say, okay, these are young people. They've got another 10, 20 years before they'll potentially be a threat. So most of the pushback is actually not coming from those existing leaders. Some of our donors raised this question, and so one of the things we're doing is we're tracking a cohort of our young leaders as they progress through life against others who almost made into our selection process. So we're as talented as the ones that we admitted, but didn't necessarily have a chance to go to the academy, and seeing how they impact the society versus the ones that come through the academy, and so that you can actually give more data to our donors to say this is actually how our young leaders are affecting the world versus those who didn't get a chance to come to the academy. But in terms of the existing leaders, for the most part, they don't feel threatened by us yet.
It's just that your work exposes extraordinary injustice. So do you get pushback? Do they want to put a lid on the two of you ladies?
Well, Pakistan's been a dangerous environment to operate in, and we've had to adapt. So the work that we've done there has been confidential. Malala's not been able to return home since she was shot. And when I go, I do keep it private. So it is a dangerous environment to operate in, but it was dangerous to begin with, and there's a confluence of factors that will need to move and evolve for that to change. But we focus on the positive, and we see immense hope. We were just in Jordan at the Syrian border, and we did a big push there to urge donors to give to education and to support refugee education, to the point that aid is not about giving blankets and food. Refugees are refugees on average for 17 years, and we need to invest in who they become, and we need to find ways to deliver education in an emergency context. And that was very well received, and so, there's places where it's harder, there's places where our presence is more welcome, and we have to balance the two.
I'll turn the question to you two. Lauren, do you get pushback from competitive, established businesses? Because upon arrival, you sort of showed them, well, this is something you kind of should have always been doing.
Yes, we have. I mean, again, more so when we were first starting, I would say, than now. But
maybe they didn't take you so seriously then. Now you're really stealing market share.
We're getting there, thank you. I would say, given that we have a give back and, use organic cotton and even in the way we make our products, a lot of companies who we work with sort of say, well, if we do something with you, it's going to highlight the fact that the rest of our product line doesn't give back or isn't made as ethically, perhaps. But honestly, a lot of companies, I haven't heard that in about 3 or 4 years, so I think a lot of companies are over that hump and realize that, again, in order to retain and to gain a loyal consumer base, they need to support give back programs, whether it's feed or whether it's one of their own making. But I would say early on it really was a struggle, and people honestly didn't know what to make of us. They many people still think we're not just a straight nonprofit. So it is constantly explaining to folks that yes, we are for-profit, although we're very charitable, for-profit and give away a large chunk of our profits as a donation. It's still a model that most established companies kind of can't fully wrap their head around.
Are you seeing some of those established companies try to adopt the model to what they're already doing?
To a certain degree, I own 100% of Feed. I can be charitable. I think a lot of big companies don't have that freedom or flexibility. So even if the leadership wanted to be as charitable as Feed is, I don't know if they would per se. So it's a personal, decision I've made for Feed, and because of that, maybe we can't, hire as quickly as I would have liked, or, do certain initiatives we want to do. But the more important thing is that we're remaining extremely charitable, and it's not pennies on the dollar. I want the consumers to know that when they buy something from Feed, we're giving away a substantial donation.
I think a lot of companies are adopting practices in line with the same logic, and I think it's born both out of people meaning well. I think most people want to do good if and when they can, and I think now they're supported by increasing evidence. The slides Lauren shared, if you're a villain, you still look at those slides and say, all right, I'll accept the social good that will be done for the increase in revenue that I can see through such an activity. And so, and I think most people aren't villains. I've never met a villain, actually. I think most people are trying to align interests well. We have that third business, Goodcore, the consulting arm, and we work with a ton of Fortune 500 companies. And they're awesome people trying to do awesome things, and they've got great scale. And so figuring out how to line up, whether it's supply chain efforts or whether it's donation components to their products, and really kind of taking the assets they have, which are so significant, and putting it against the logic that's framed in those slides, it introduces a new competitor into our industry. Like, a lot of big players are starting to enter the industry and not just like upstarts. But it's super exciting because I think it becomes more and more just a default reality that businesses, to compete both for consumer engagement and from employee engagement, need to be playing in this world smartly.
Fred, are you seeing smarter philanthropy from your funders? Is there a shift in those who are just giving and those who are giving but also trying to support you and give you their intellectual, their professional expertise to help you with your mission more than just dollars?
Absolutely. We find that the donors who support us and that get the most out of the engagement with us are those that give more than just their money. They give their time, they give their ideas. So I'll give an example. There's a couple that support us who are based in Boston. The man is he's a former hedge fund manager who's retired very early age, and his wife used to work with McKinsey. And we have about 300 young leaders who are studying in the United States right now, attending colleges. And Ed, the man in the family, has used his network with global corporations to personally place several hundred of these students in internships. And he's, even though he's retired, he probably spends about 80 to 100 hours a week working on ALA work, and calling companies to get them to take our young people for interns. He'll get on Skype and prepare someone for an interview with a potential employer. He's always, he knows every single thing about every single young person, and he loves what he's doing. His wife has been involved in organizing a network of host families for our students who are studying in the U.S. and they organize every Thanksgiving a reunion at their home for about 40 of our students. So they're very, very involved, and they've made tremendous impact on us, probably more than their money has, because they've given us their time and their ideas as well. They serve on our board as well and so forth. So we find that is really smart philanthropy. They know everything we're doing. They've gotten very deeply involved, and it makes the impact of their money go much, much further.
Your Royal Highness, it's sort of funny, the pursuit of happiness, the happiness index, the King's Challenge. Many have said there's a documentary coming out that Bhutan, the happiest place on earth. But here we are in the middle of Beverly Hills, one of the most expensive zip codes in the world. And within these tents, I'm sure there are billions of dollars of net worth. What is it about the idea? What is it about your father's challenge, his mission, that represents happiness that maybe others around the world who seemingly are in this massive pursuit to win or to be happy aren't getting? What's in your special sauce?
I'd be lying if I said that Bhutan has found the formula to happiness. Happiness is a relative term, as we all know. But I think the idea of gross national happiness, as I was mentioning earlier, is a more wholesome way of looking into development. Because when His Majesty, my father, became king in 1974, he's retired by the way now. When he became king in 1974, he said that gross national happiness was more important than gross domestic product. But this doesn't mean that gross domestic product is not important.
Did he get pushback when he said that?
Excuse me?
Did he get pushback when he said happiness was more important than GDP? How did his peers take it?
How did
his peers?
I think many senior officials must have secretly thought that he was a little bit too idealistic and a little bit crazy in the head as well. But now, several decades, years down the line, the world seems to take a lot of keen interest in it. But if I may illustrate a little bit more about gross national happiness, we have 4 pillars. We consider socio-economic development to be very important. We consider our preserving the preservation of our culture and traditions as to be very important as well, and the preservation of our environment to be also a very important factor, and good governance also to be a very important factor. So these 4 pillars outline a development philosophy for Bhutan. But if this is photocopied to many other countries, I'm not too sure how successful it might be. But if anything,
why?
If there is an idea,
why wouldn't it be successful? Because the size and scale of other countries?
Well, I have to be honest with you. Most countries, especially like the United States, have lost out on its culture, have focused a bit too much on material gain, and have destroyed the environment in many ways. Excuse me for this example, but there are elements that many countries can learn, many organizations can appreciate. As I was mentioning earlier, not only concentrating on material gain, but the little things that make and give meaning to life. In short, as it were.
Wow, thank you. We only have a minute left, so I just want to give everyone a chance to share a final thought. You've clearly given us a good one. Shiza, not what do you hope to be, what do you think you stand for, your mission?
The belief that every girl in the world has a chance at a better future, and that education and learning is a way to give them that chance.
Fred?
I stand for a belief that leadership is really what's going to make the big difference in Africa, and in particular the next generation of leaders. And if we invest in developing a new generation of leaders, then everything else will follow in Africa.
I stand for trying my best.
Can't beat that one. I guess I stand for, the creative pursuit of trying to end hunger, trying to make sure people's basic needs are met so they can then go on to, live their life to their fullest.
Does that sort of go against the way capitalists, ultra-competitive, game changers think? Because when you think about the way capitalism was designed, it's about getting an edge. And it seems like everything we've spoken about here today is about removing that edge and instead getting everyone to a place where they're starting from zero. So do you think we're seeing a social change that we're really going to change the way we approach life?
I think the comments that Jigel was making are extremely interesting for the person and not just the country about what is a valuable life and where does one truly get joy from. I think that's something people are thinking a lot about. I think the edge speaks to a nature of a zero sum, that like my pursuit of that I need to defeat Lauren somehow, but I don't think it's only valuable if it actually is valuable to that happiness. So I think people have a pretty open mind to what makes sense for the path forward, and I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They're so young and special. They were able to read that the sign said session over, and I couldn't see that far. So on so many levels, I'm humbled, I'm honored, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
This was a pleasure. Thank you.